أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسول رب العالمين. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Please send a louder salawat. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It is an honor and a privilege to be amongst you on these days of the commemoration of the tragedy of Abu Abdullah, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We are once again coming together to commemorate the death, the tragedy of Imam Hussein, and the tragedy that befell the family of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt. Year after year, we gather together in these majalis and we remember Imam Hussein and his life and his words and his lessons and his sacrifice. And this has become a custom, in particular for the Shia, for the followers of the school of the Ahlul Bayt, but as well for the larger Muslim Ummah. It is a custom where we remember not just the life and the tragedy of Imam Hussein, but as well that larger message that Imam Hussein was trying to give to the Muslim Ummah. That revival of the message of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad al-Mustafa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And because it is Muharram once again, let me recite these lines of poetry. These are lines in Farsi for those who are familiar with, who speak the language. These are very famous lines that are commonly recited on these days. It is by a poet, Muhtashim Kashani, where he says, Baz in che shurish ast, Baz in che shurish ast ke dar khalq alam ast, Baz in che nauh o, che aza o, che matam ast. The poet says, what a tragedy. This tragedy has come once again, and what a tragedy it is. What a revolution that has come in the creation of Allah. This natural world that we see is turned upside down on these days. Creation, the skies and the earth, it is as though it weeps, as though creation is being pulled and torn apart on these days. If we only had the eyes to see it. And what a tragedy and what a lamentation and what eulogies are these that we hear on these days. If only we could see, and if only we could hear. It is on these days, again, that we remember the lessons that Imam Hussein was trying to convey. And in trying to remember those lessons, inshallah, in these next few days that we are together, we will try to discuss some of the words of the son of Imam Hussein, Imam Zain al-Abidin, Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam. We send the salawat. In the dua that is famously called Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. Inshallah, in these next few nights, we will try to understand and explore this dua. It is a dua that is profound and deep and beautiful. For those of us who have begun our journey in trying to beautify and to make good ourselves, to try to acquire virtues and akhlaq within ourselves, this dua is one of the greatest resources that we have. It is the words and the lessons from Imam Zain al-Abidin, from our fourth Imam, and the way that the Imam explains what akhlaq is can really change the way we look at not just what we are trying to reach, but as well who we are as human beings and what our potential can be. And in fact, what the Imam shows us is that akhlaq isn't just something personal. It's not just something for me in my own life, in my own individual life. But rather, akhlaq, true akhlaq, is something that should transform myself and then transform those around me, and at a larger level, transform society. And so, inshallah, we will begin these discussions about this dua of Imam Zain al-Abidin. But before we do that, inshallah, tonight I wanted to take a step back. Before we start talking about those virtues and those qualities that we, as Muslims, as mu'mins, as human beings, must try to acquire within ourselves, to be good and to be true, and to be in line with that creation that Allah has created us upon, that nature that Allah has created us upon. We must have these qualities and these virtues. But before we talk about those virtues, what those virtues are, and how we can acquire those virtues, I'd like to take a step back and talk about the reality that sometimes evades us. Virtues and akhlaq and goodness and truth talks about a reality in the world that is different from the reality that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. On a daily basis, we may, for example, as the brother said, live an hour away. We have these commutes, these hour-long commutes from, say, for example, our house to our work, and we go to work and we, go through all of the difficulties of our days, and we, spend our time, the hours of our day in trying to provide for ourselves and our families. And then we come home after, again, a long and difficult sometimes journey, and we're tired and we're spent. And we spend our weeks doing this. And then on the weekend as well, we have sometimes a lot of different difficulties and a lot of different schedules that are packed, right? A lot of different programs that we take part in, whether it is within our communities or within our families and so on. And sometimes we get to a point in our lives when we realize that we've spent an entire year or even years of our life without having the opportunity to take a step back and reflect on where our life is going. We are so caught up sometimes in our schedules and our daily activities that we sometimes don't have the time to reflect and contemplate on what our life is all about, on what we are spending our lives on. Not to say that going to work and providing for your family is bad. That is actually one of our responsibilities in Islam, to provide for ourselves and our families, and to be financially independent and responsible. And as well to be gainfully employed. Those are all responsibilities that each mu'min, each Muslim has within Islam. But it behooves us, and it is also a responsibility upon each and every mu'min, each and every Muslim, to take a step back every so often. Whether it is certain times in our day that Allah has set for us to do our prayers, whether it is certain times in the week, for example, Friday, that Allah has set within our schedule so that we can take a step back, or whether it is certain times in the year, certain moments in the year where we take a step back and we try to understand what our life is all about. What are we spending our lives doing? In fact, it is among the blessings that Allah has given us as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, that Allah places within the Islamic calendar certain moments where we can recalibrate ourselves. We can recalibrate our souls and really think about and contemplate who we are as human beings and what lives we are leading. And this is that very message that Imam Hussein was setting out to convey to the Muslim Ummah. That very lesson that Imam Hussein was trying to express to the Muslims was for you to understand what Allah's creation is all about. Now, let's take a step back into the history. And before Imam Hussein began his journey, his brother asks him, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya asks him, "Oh, Aba Abdullah, oh Imam Hussein, why are you going to go on this journey? Why are you going to, even though you know these people who have written to you, these people are not loyal. They're not going to stick to their word. You know who these people are. You interacted with these people when you were with them in Kufa, when your father was the Khalifa of the time. You know who these people are. And they also, not only to your father, but as well to your brother, they were disloyal to him, Imam Hassan. You know who these people are. So why are you going on this journey?" Imam al-Hussein, in these famous words, he says, "Inni lam akhruj ashara wala batara, wala mufsidan wala zalima." I am not leaving, I'm not standing up, I'm not rising up to show any sort of insolence or any sense of kufr or forgetting about all of the blessings that Allah has given me. That's not the reason why I'm standing up. And it's not for me to increase corruption in the land or for me to be cause any sort of oppression within the land. وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. I only rise up, I only stand up at this moment in time so that I may renew and revive and correct that ummah of my prophet, of the grandfather, of my grandfather, of the Prophet of Islam. There was a lack in the ummah. There was a blot on the ummah, a problem with the ummah. And that was that the ummah of the Prophet, the ummah during the life and this time in Imam Hussein's lifetime, had turned their direction, had turned their face towards becoming more and more financially wealthy. They were turning their direction and turning their face towards becoming more and more powerful and establishing a Muslim empire the world had never seen before. And so the Ummah, the Muslims of that time, had lost sight of their moral and spiritual responsibility, that upstanding character, that lesson that they were going to portray and present to the world, they had forgotten all of that. During the Prophet's lifetime, the Muslim Ummah was established based on a moral ethic, was established based on truth and justice. And they had understood and they saw what it meant to be truthful and what it meant to be just. The Muslims during the Prophet's time, through the Prophet's character and through the Prophet's example, were given an insight into God's creation beyond that physical reality that they had seen in front of them. And so the Muslims during the Prophet's time were able to see beyond their physical reality, beyond their money and their wealth, beyond their physical comforts that they were acquiring later on within the Muslim history. But once the Prophet passes, and once history continues and time changes, we see that the Muslims start to divert their attention towards other issues. They start to try to acquire physical and material well-being and comforts that are distracting them from that original message of the Prophet. And so it is Imam Hussein who sees his responsibility as being the redirecting of those Muslims back to that deeper reality. Imam Hussein was trying to get the Muslims to look back at that deeper reality that God has created within His creation. And so Imam Hussein says, لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. I see the ummah of my prophet, the ummah of my grandfather, turning their face away from their moral responsibility and turning towards other things. And so Imam Hussein continues and he says, and I only want to amra bil ma'ruf. I only want to enjoin people towards good. Wa anha anil munkar. Wa asira bi sirati jaddi wa abi. And I want people to direct their lives and direct their efforts and their traditions and what they do within their life toward that same tradition of the Prophet and my father. And so when we look in the tradition and the lessons of the Prophet, we see that the Prophet, first and foremost, establishes makarimul akhlaq as his most important mission. Indeed, there's a hadith from Rasulullah Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu where the Prophet says, it is reported that the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The Prophet says, I was sent to you so that I may complete for you the most beautiful and the best of characters and the best of virtues. And this is the type of ummah that I want to see. The Prophet, his entire mission was so that we can complete these virtues within ourselves. In fact, when we look at the Quran describes itself as explaining to us a level of reality beyond the level of reality that we see on a day-to-day basis, beyond the level of reality that we interact with on this physical level. In this first few ayahs of Surah Al-Baqarah, we read, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Allah says, Alif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب, that, or this book, this Quran that you have in front of you, La rayba fi. There is no doubt or question about it. It is what? Guidance for the muttaqin, for those pious and virtuous human beings. Alladina yu'minuna bil ghayb. Those who believe in the unseen. We said that there are two levels of God's creation. There is the physical reality that we see and we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And then there is this level of the ghayb, this level that we don't see. we don't hear, we don't smell, we don't taste, and we don't touch. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. These muttaqeen, these pious individuals, are individuals who accept and believe in a reality, in a level of God's creation beyond the level that they see and they touch. Beyond the level that they interact with their physical and material bodies. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. Right? They don't just believe, but they act on that belief. They act in devotion and piety towards that belief. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And whatever we give to them, they give in God's path. They forgive and give away in that path. Right? So, the first thing that we have to realize is that this level of creation that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, our daily lives, the physical world that we interact with, this is not the only level of God's creation. God has created a creation which is much more profound than we can possibly even imagine. Much more profound and deeper than we really realize. And it is towards that deeper level of creation, towards that deeper realm of God's creation that we have to look towards as Muslims, as mu'mineen, as followers of the message of the Prophet. Because this is the very message that the Prophet brought us. This is the very message that the Prophet is trying to get us to seek. And if we were trying to understand what is this exactly, there's this two levels of creation, what exactly does that mean? If somebody asks us, one of our coworkers, or say for example one of our classmates in school, if somebody asks us, what is Karbala all about? If we were to tell them, for example, that Karbala was something that happened in history, happened over 1400 years ago, or about 1400 years ago, and it was basically two different armies, one large army and a smaller band of people, maybe 100 or so men, coming together, and these two contingents fought, and some of them were killed on either side, and then one of the contingents was totally obliterated, and they were taken, the people who survived were taken as slaves and were taken as prisoners, and they were paraded around in different cities and so on and so forth. And then that ended, and then another era in Islamic history began, and then that ended, and so on and so forth. If somebody were to explain to us Karbala in these ways, in this way, in terms of the physical reality of Karbala, as Shia and as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we will tell that person that you have missed the entire point. You have not understood what Karbala is all about. Yes, you have gotten certain facts correct. You know that maybe there were 72 people, maybe there were 75, maybe there were 100 who were killed on the side of Imam Hussein. And then there were maybe 100, 200 or so people who were killed on the other side. Or maybe 1,000 or 2,000. You might get certain facts right. You might know where the location of this battle was. You might know how long this battle took. And you might even know very distinct details about this battle. But if you are to limit yourself to that physical reality of Karbala and of Muharram, then you have missed the entire point. It does not really make sense for a people to remember and commemorate a memory, a battle that took place 1400 years ago, if it's simply about two armies coming together and fighting, and some of them getting killed and some of them not. That does not quite make sense. It is only when we look a little bit deeper, when we look at that moral reality of Karbala, that message, that moral message of Karbala, that we can really truly understand what Karbala is all about. That this was not just two armies coming together. This was truth embodied versus evil embodied. And these two were coming to that battle. And it is at this moment in time when we see truth prevailing, even though on the physical level Imam Hussein was killed, on the moral and spiritual level we see that Imam Hussein was much more successful than we realize, than his enemies realized. If you take any tragedy that touches us on a deep level, and if you were to just explain that as a physical phenomenon, on the physical level of reality, then you would have missed that entire reality. If you look at a father, and if you ask a father who has lost his son, or ask a mother who has lost her daughter, and if you tell them that this is just another human being who has passed away, what would they tell you? They would say that, no, this is not another human being. This is not another living organism that has passed away. This is someone who I loved deeply and who was good and who was beautiful. That is what we human beings are all about. If we limit ourselves to the physical world and to our daily interactions, then we will have missed the majority of Allah's creation. And in fact, we would have missed what Allah has created us for. When Allah says, مَا خُلِقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, what is Allah saying? Allah is saying that you should not just look at the physical prostrating and the bending down of a human being. You should look at what that human being is trying to aspire to. Right? When Allah says, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, Allah is saying, I did not create human being for this physical few days that he lives. I created human being for perpetuity. And this is one of the characteristics. If you look at the Quran as a guide, right? We have, for example, different guides, different maps that we have for our physical world, right? When we are trying to get from one location to another in our day-to-day journeys, in our day-to-day drives, we will look at our GPS, we will look at our maps and so on and so forth, so that we can get to from one part of the city to another. If we look at the Quran, in terms of the way the Quran describes itself, then we can almost think about the Quran as a guide and a GPS for our moral world. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, right? The Quran is a guide for us to be able to navigate the moral and the spiritual world, for us to go beyond the physical world, and for us to be able to determine what are those things that we have to do and what are those things that we have to abstain from. And so the Quran describes for us in various different ways, in various different ayat and surahs of the Quran describes for us that moral world. And it describes for us various characteristics of that moral world, and it says one of those characteristics and one of those distinctions between our physical world and that moral world is that that moral world is one that is unchanging. It continues and it stays in perpetuity. This physical world that we have, the Quran explains it and describes it as one that is one of change, one of birth and growth, and then one of decay and death. So this physical world that we interact with, we see that, for example, some of us who have children, those children are born, they grow up, and then all of a sudden decay starts, and then we go towards death. Right? وَمَن نُعَمِّرْهُ نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Allah says in Surah Yasin, this world that you interact with, this world that you see around you, whoever we give them life and we extend their life, this is a world wherein that extended life ultimately leads to death. Whatever life is extended, it decays and it leads ultimately towards death. On the other hand, the way Allah explains the moral world is in direct contrast to this. Allah, in multiple surahs of the Quran, He explains that that world, the moral and the spiritual world, is one that continues forever, and it never changes. And it is the real and the true world behind, it is the true reality behind this world. Allah in Surah At-Takwir, this surah in the final juz of the Quran, Allah explains to us what this world is exactly all about. This moral and spiritual world, what exactly is it all about? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah explains, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم كدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت. Allah describes for us this world of change, this world of decay, of death. He says, and there's going to be, and Allah swears by this, He promises, He swears, He says, and I swear by that time wherein the sun, this most stable thing within our physical world, the sun is going to be darkened. The light of the sun is going to be extinguished. And then, by that time wherein the stars are going to be darkened as well. وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. And these mountains, these pegs that Allah has created within the earth, these pegs are going to be, these mountains are going to move. They're going to journey and travel. Allah is describing for us the physical world, the most stable things, the stablest things that we can think of, we can imagine in our physical world. Allah says, all of these things that you think you know about His creation, all of these things that seem stable to you at this time and at this moment, all of these things are going to change. All of these things are going to come to an end. وَإِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. Allah continues and describes, and then in ayahs after this, Allah says, وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِّرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَحْضَرَتْ. Allah says, and then all of a sudden, when this world has come to an end, you will realize Allah will bring this Jahim, this great fire, and this fire will be, all of a sudden, it will be emblazed. It will be on fire, and this fire will be some sort of, almost as though Allah is bringing this fire up. And He is, putting embers and fuel back into this fire. It's going to be emblazoned. And then, وَالْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ. And the Jannah, paradise, is going to be brought near. Now Jannah and Jahim, heaven and hell, aren't far away. They're not in a particular physical location that is maybe far away. What Allah is trying to explain to us is that what is going to seem far away to us, a moment in our time, a moment in our creation, which is going to seem very, very far away, is going to be brought very, very close. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَحْضَرَتْ. When all of creation, when all of those things that we are comfortable with all of those things that we know and we recognize, when all of those things are gone away, human beings are going to be brought alone. And they're going to be brought on their own. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَحْضَرَتْ. And they're going to be left with themselves and their actions. Nothing else. We are one day going to be all alone, without anybody else to take our hand. And it is at that moment that our eyes are going to be opened to Allah's creation. And we are going to truly realize that this physical world that we interact with, that we put our time and our sweat into, and we try to better for ourselves, this physical world has come to an end. This world is one that is going to die, and it's going to change, and it's not going to stay for us, and it's going to be that moral and that spiritual world that we are going to have to face. We are going to have to face ourselves, and who we truly are, and what we have wrought with our hands. And it is that view of God's creation that the Prophet was trying to convey. That was the message of the Prophet. If we have turned our face as an ummah, as a community, away from that moral reality, that spiritual reality, and we have put our attention and all of our efforts towards making our physical world and our physical reality more comfortable, then we have lost the message of the Prophet. We have forgotten the lessons of the Prophet. And so what Imam Hussein is trying to convey to the Muslims is that you have forgotten and you have turned a blind eye towards that spiritual realm. That realm which is even more real than the physical world that you're spending all your time and all your efforts towards. That realm, that reality, that world is going to last forever. This world is going to come to an end. So Muslims who are in fear of this government, who are in fear and who tremble at the face of their own death, do not worry. Have courage. Be brave in the face of death, because this is just a physical death. This is just a momentary moment in your lifetime. Once you come to an end, once this physical life comes to an end, there's going to be an entire lifetime that is going to exist beyond this moment. And so Imam Hussein turns towards the ummah and he declares this message. And he tries to get the Muslims to turn their attention towards this deeper level of reality. And so as Shia, as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we have to as well understand what that basic message of the Imam was. And so we as well turn our attention towards that deeper reality. And inshallah, in these next few nights, again, we will talk about how we can prepare ourselves, how we can begin to develop those tools and those skills to be able to deal with that deeper reality. Now that we realize and that we are aware of that deeper reality, we have to be able to navigate and understand what that deeper reality is all about. We have to be able to traverse that journey, that deeper journey that we have. And so we have to have those skills. And this dua of Imam Zainul Abidin is a dua which will allow us to traverse those difficult moments. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let us turn our attention towards Karbala, towards Imam Hussein and the Safir and the envoy of Imam Hussein towards Kufa. It is said that Imam Hussein loved his cousin, Muslim al-Aqdi. He loved him dearly, and he knew that Muslim was one of his most loyal and his most trustworthy companions. Muslim was part of the family of Imam Hussein. He was one of the closest people to the Ahlul Bayt. And so this is why Imam Hussein sends his most trustworthy envoy towards Kufa, so that Muslim can determine whether the Kufans who had sent letter after letter, had sent letter after letter to Imam Hussein, calling him towards Kufa, telling Imam Hussein that we are ready and we are your loyal followers. O Imam Hussein, the letters said, come and we will follow you. We will spill our blood and shed our blood for you, O Imam Hussein, and we are willing to sacrifice our lives in your way. And it is with these pledges and this loyalty that Muslim turns towards Imam Hussein, and he sends a letter towards the Imam saying that, O Imam, I have come to Kufa, and I have tested the Shia and these followers of your school, and I have seen them to be true. And I have seen them to be loyal. And Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Imam Hussein, you can begin your journey now. Muslim writes to the Imam. He says, they have pledged their loyalty and their allegiance to me as an envoy for you. O Imam Hussein, you have their pledge of allegiance. And so Imam Hussein, come, begin your journey towards Kufa. It is with a sense, maybe we can imagine a Muslim writing this letter with a sense of joy, with a sense of honor, with his hat held up high. And so Muslim writes this letter and he sends it to Imam Hussein, thinking that the Imam is going to come to Kufa and is going to prevail over the enemies of the Prophet and the enemies of Allah. But yet, after Imam Hussein has begun his journey, he has received the letter of Muslim. All of a sudden, Muslim sees Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad when he enters into the city of Kufa. All of a sudden, Muslim sees that these pledges of allegiance are turning into nothing. These people who have pledged allegiance towards the Imam, they are turning their backs to the Imam and they're breaking their pledges. And we can only imagine when Muslim sees that the followers of the Imam, these people who have pledged their loyalty to the Imam as they are leaving his side, we can only imagine what Muslim must have felt. He must have thought to himself, it is because of me and my promise that the Imam has begun his journey. It is because of me and my promise and these pledges that I have taken from the Muslims, from the Kufans, that the Imam has begun his journey. And were it not for my letter and were it not for these pledges, maybe the Imam would have stayed safe and he would not have been forced to sacrifice his life, because Muslim knew how evil and oppressive these people were. Muslim knew who Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was. And he knew that they were only after spilling the blood of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt. They had done it before and they will do it again. And so we see that Muslim ibn Aqil, in those difficult nights, that difficult night before he reaches his martyrdom, Muslim tries to gather as many soldiers as he can, as many followers as he can. And he enters into the masjid, and it is said that he had gathered a number of different followers and a number of different soldiers, and he enters into the masjid. And one by one, slowly, these people leave the side of Muslim. He prays his Maghrib, and he sees that there are only a few people left, and by the time Muslim prays his Isha, he sees that he is all alone. And it is on this night when Muslim finds himself alone in the city of Kufa, the city of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the city of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muslim finds himself alone. He goes knocking door to door, trying to find some shelter. He tries to look in the different streets for some shelter and for some compassionate heart. And yet he is not able to find a single soul who is able to protect him. And so finally Muslim comes and he sees an old woman and he asks